been a busy time for Nike's lawyers lately, and I've seen a lot of people talking about these two lawsuits that are kind of linked together involving two very high-profile people. But now I think that it's time for us to debunk a couple of things and really get to the bottom of what's going on and why, honestly, I'm on Nike's side. The first lawsuit involves Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ sued Nike in 2022 for $860,000 in unpaid royalties that he felt Nike withheld from him after taking a first right of refusal and matching Adidas' offer to bring him on a team. Nike apparently promised OBJ to be a brand icon and to get his own line of gear that never ended up happening, so he also sued Nike for an additional $20 million worth of damages. Nike then countersued OBJ, claiming that not only was he not entitled to the money, but Nike was entitled to their own millions of dollars because he was customizing his cleats and his gloves, covering up the Nike insignia while being a Nike athlete. This case dragged on for 2 years, and the judge ultimately decided that it was a wash. Nike didn't breach their contract, but they also weren't entitled to any money from OBJ either. OBJ quickly went to Instagram to make it seem like he got paid a bunch of money because the documents of the verdict were sealed, but Nike shortly followed up with their own statement saying, nobody got any money except for the lawyers, of course, and everybody was just told to go home. Which leads me into the main lawsuit that we're talking about today. Now, the funny thing about OBJ's lawsuit is that those customized cleats and gloves, a lot of them, if not all of them, were actually made by Dominic Chambroni, who we all know in the sneaker world as the shoe surgeon. If you've seen a celebrity or a boxer wearing a $10,000 pair of custom Jordan 1s or Dunks lately, there's a good chance that that shoe was done by the shoe surgeon. Dom rose through the ranks, going from being a simple cobbler that was executing the ideas of people like John Geiger on the misplaced checks to ultimately creating his own, what Nike calls, illicit Nike empire, using what Nike alleges as unauthorized materials into his own creations that he would sell on his own website for thousands of dollars. Speaking of materials, Dom is also being sued by luxury fashion house Goyard for also claiming that they don't know the origin of the materials that he's using, and claims that he might be using inauthentic materials on his customs as well. Not only that, but Dom also opened the Surgeon Academy that taught up-and-coming creators and designers how to make their own variations of Nike and Jordan products. That seems to be where Nike drew the line. It was one thing for him to do these one-off creations that were using questionable materials, we'll get into that in a moment, but it's another thing to now create the next generation of bootleggers and knockoff artists that were also infringing on Nike's trademarks. The lawsuit I'm actually holding in my hand is 63 pages long, and it goes through everything that Dom did from the creation of his business to work that he actually did that was formally contracted through Nike. That's where the story gets interesting, because Dom isn't just some fly-by-night artist that makes his own one-of-one custom sneakers. He actually has been contracted through Nike to do projects on customizations directly with the brand. And we're seeing that more than ever because as I'm recording this, Dom is currently on a blitz on his social media of amplifying and highlighting all those past projects that he's done formally with Nike. However, Nike alleges specifically in the lawsuit that yes, we did work with Dom, however, we always gave him very restricted guidelines to where and how he could use our trademarks. Nike is alleging that Dom basically took an inch and went a mile with it, where yes, they might have worked with him and gave him specific parameters to be able to use their trademarks, but Dom took that upon himself to now mass produce things that had Nike's trademarks all over it without their permission. Apparently, Nike is seeking upwards of $60 million in restitution for what Dom has created with the multi-millions of dollars through his own businesses. And I don't blame him. So this has now become a conversation of creative versus the big bad swoosh. Once again, picking on the little guy, picking on the creatives like the Cool Kais or the Ami and the Hellcats, or now the shoe surgeons, people that are just trying to create their own businesses that just so happen to be using Nike's products and their trademarks, but who really cares about that? These are just creatives trying to get their art out. But the funny thing about it is that if it weren't for those trademarks that Nike had, would these people even have businesses in the first place? Would Cool Kai be able to be the Cool Kai he is today without using the Air Jordan 1? Or would the shoe surgeon be able to be who he is today without selling lasts that literally say Air Force One, or creating sneakers that literally say Surgeon Air on the tongue? Never forgetting that Nike owns the ability to put the word air on shoes in the first place. There's been a lot of chatter about this back and forth about Nike being in the wrong on this one, but how can Nike be in the wrong when people are literally creating businesses and making millions of dollars off of Nike's trademarks that Nike isn't seeing a dime of. For instance, if you watching this had a business and you were making a good amount of money off of your business, and I decided that I was going to take your logo, put it on a t-shirt and make money off of it and not give you a dime of it, would you be okay with that? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't, and I'm pretty sure I'd have a lawyer knocking at my door, which, by the way, lawyers were knocking at Dom's door with cease and desist, according to Nike in this lawsuit as well. Multiple cease and desist that Dom either ignored or played what Nike called a shell game, meaning that he would take the sneakers that were infringing on Nike's trademarks off of his website, only to put them back on his website or to sell them through other channels later on. Dom knew what he was doing. So Nike basically wants Dom to stop making anything with any of their trademarks on it at all. And if Dom were that much of a creator and a designer that he didn't need Nike and their trademarks in order to keep building his empire, how come he never came out with his own silhouette? I mean, John Geiger did. But that's where this case gets even more interesting, because I got a little bit of information that I don't think is totally public knowledge yet, but I'm gonna share it with you guys because we're family. Nike's problem here is not just the fact that Dom created this academy with all these people that are also making bootleg versions of Nikes, but the fact that Dom actually wasn't even using authentic bases for his sneakers at all, and the sneakers that he was pumping out were actually fake Nikes. But how would Nike have intel on the fact that Dom was possibly using fake bases for his sneakers? Well, for that, we gotta rewind back to a few lawsuits ago. Remember when Nike sued La La Land and Warren Lotus and shut down the operations that Warren Lotus was doing when he did those Jason Voorhees bootleg Nike dunks? Well, if you guys remember, those cases were settled confidentially. We never really knew what the ramifications of those settlements were. But what we do know, thanks to a little bit of information that I got, and thanks to people like Sockjig that have been following this as well, was that named within those lawsuits were sneakers that Dom was already creating. Sneakers like the Mars Yard Air Jordan 1. While it may have seemed at the time that the Mars Yard Jordan 1 was a sneaker made as an authentic Jordan that was just customized and then sold, what actually ended up happening was that that sneaker, come to find out, was being made allegedly on fake outsoles and fake bases within the La La Land factory. How would I know that? Well, for two reasons. Number one, if these sneakers that Dom was making were made off of authentic Nike Air Jordan 1 bases, like the label on the boxes asserts that they are by literally saying Air Jordan 1, then Dom shouldn't have a problem with producing a paper trail of receipts for all of those Air Jordan 1s that he was making to create those customs off of. But I don't think that Dom can produce receipts for that, because in fact, those sneakers were not authentic Air Jordan bases that were used to create those customs off of. The second issue I have is that these sneakers allegedly were handcrafted by the shoe surgeon when, according to this drawing that I received, they were mass produced by those same factories that were making those inauthentic sneakers. And if you happen to think maybe these were a bootleg version of the Mars Yard Customs, if you zoom in a little more, you can literally see the shoe surgeon's name on these sheets that were used at the stations in the factory. I hate to say it, but if you're the owner of one of those projects, there's a good chance that you're wearing a fake pair of sneakers that were just customized with nice materials. Now, I don't know if Dom will ever see this video. I don't know the guy personally, but what I will say is that we can't deny the fact that the way that a lot of these guys like Cool Kai and Shoe Surgeon and Omi and a Hellcat all got hot was by using Nike's trademark silhouettes and brand insignias and trade dresses for their own monetary gain. And it's only a matter of time, and there's only but so much money that you can make before Nike is gonna say enough and step in, even if they partnered with you in the past. This is a classic case of Icarus, the one who flew a little too closely to the sun. And it seems like those wings for the shoe surgeon might be melting a bit because he's flying a little bit too high. But sound off down below. Let me know what you guys think about the shoe surgeon case. Are you on his side and feel like Nike is in the wrong here? Or do you feel like Nike is within their right to protect their own intellectual property? I would love to know what you think.